And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on this Thursday evening. Some Thursday night football going on between the Cowboys and Seahawks. Pretty good game out there on Amazon Prime. But we appreciate you guys making time for us tonight here on YouTube. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that confetti and heart if you wouldn't mind as well in the chat. Really does help us out. If you haven't followed us over there on X either, it is Upside SN. So without further ado, let's get into some of the headlines that we've seen over the last 24 hours. The Cincinnati Reds once again have struck in free agency. Right after we got off the air last night, they signed Nick Martinez, 2 years, $26 million. It does include an opt-out for Nick Martinez after that first season. Martinez does seem to like that opt-out in his contract. He has gotten yet another one. This is his third contract in a row that's had an opt-out clause for him. He, of course, had a kind of a middling career before he went over to Japan anyway, came back to the stateside anyway, played for the San Diego Padres for a couple of seasons, and now finds his way to the Cincinnati Reds. Reds are looking for some starting pitching. I do not expect them to stop here with Nick Martinez. They also brought in Emilio Pagan for their bullpen, but a good start here in free agency before the winter meetings for the Cincinnati Reds. I still think they need at least one more horse in that rotation at minimum, and at least one more piece out there in that bullpen. Other than that, they have a very good, young, productive, young roster position player-wise. I think maybe they could use a veteran bat in there as well. Somebody who could kind of be an adult in the room, kind of talk hitting, that kind of a thing. A guy kind of like J.D. Martinez, Justin Turner, something like that. Michael Brantley might make some sense on a 1-year low-cost deal just to kind of get some professionalism as far as the way they go about their at-bats into that clubhouse. They have a lot of talent. I just want to make sure that they're going to be led down the right path by a good hitting coach and a good hitter on the roster that can kind of filter the message between management and player. So we'll see what happens for the Reds going forward, but a good start here in free agency for the Reds, bringing in 2 pitchers. Obviously their biggest need is in that rotation, and I do not expect this will be it. Could they still play at the top of the market for a guy like Blake Snell? Maybe go the trade route for Tyler Glasnow, Corbin Burns. Remains to be seen if they go that high. I would not rule them out on the market for Eduardo Rodriguez. That seems like a good fit there. We'll see where Rodriguez goes, but he's going to have a healthy market. Baltimore, of course, had lots of interest around the trade deadline. Dodgers obviously got the trade done for him, but couldn't get him to agree to come to the Dodgers after they had agreed to terms with the Tigers. So pitching is going to be the name of the game here at the winter meeting, so keep your eyes peeled for the next couple of starting pitchers to sign. I'm expecting Jordan Montgomery here in the next couple of days. We got a little bit of Shohei Otani news, so let's get into that. Now, in case you guys are unfamiliar, this is MLB Trad Rumors.com. They used to be an unbiased source for baseball coverage or any other sport that you're interested in, but over the years we've started to see some bias start to tick in, and now we've seen that they at least have some affiliation with Fox Sports over the last few days. I've noticed that as well. So kind of take that for a grain of, kind of take the information that you get from them with a grain of salt, because some of this might not be always the most up to date or relevant information. So keep your eyes peeled for some of those issues starting to crop up in the site. My apologies. Got a frog in my throat. Alrighty. So I told you guys there was some Shohei Otani news. The news comes from Michael Marino, kind of an independent reporter on Twitter anyway for baseball. I'm not sure how vetted this information is, but a number of different sources are starting to say this as well, that the Texas Rangers, one of the teams that I had thought, and many of us in the industry had thought, was going to be, or were going to be one of the finalists for Shohei Otani. They're apparently getting the feeling from Shohei's camp that they're not necessarily one of the front runners. Not saying that Otani's not interested in going to Texas, but that they're not one of the top 2 or 3 favorites for him. And so because of that, the Rangers seem like they've at least taken a step back in their pursuit for Shohei Otani. I think this does nothing but boon the chances for all the other teams still involved, more specifically for the LA Dodgers. I thought the Rangers probably held the biggest candle for their contention anyway to be able to sign him. Giants, I think, are going to be a distant also ran. I think the Cubs make some sense, but I didn't think they would ultimately get that type of deal done. Mets have the money, but I don't think they're going to make that move this offseason. Braves seem like a good dark horse candidate. Blue Jays less so. Padres even less so. But for my money, it seems like the Dodgers right now, I would boost their chances up to 65% now to bring in Shohei. For the Rangers, the sourcing anyway does say that they're taking a step back, not that they're taking a step out of the running for Shohei. So I would have taken their chances probably from around, say, 25% down to around 10%. I think if Shohei really wants to go to Texas, Texas will still, of course, find a way to make it make it happen. But it sounds like his camp hasn't exactly made it clear to Texas, at least, that they think of the Rangers as a legitimate chance for him to actually go there. So we'll see what happens with Shohei. Obviously, the biggest free agent on the market. Dodgers absolutely need to bring him in, especially after the hits they took the past season, kind of paring down their payroll, getting underneath the luxury tax. They need to push their chips to the middle. Their prospects haven't performed quite as well as of late, but they still have a bevy of them on the way. They are not hurting as far as prospects, as far as that's concerned. But I think they're going to start to use some of those guys as trade chips once again, like we saw in a trade for Trey Turner and Max Scherzer, like we saw for Machado, and so forth and so on. But now it's time for the Dodgers to kind of turn the page a little bit for the next phase of contention here for the Dodgers. This was kind of a retooling year for them. This needs to be a full-bore year where they go after Otani, they go after Yamamoto, they go after Snell, they go after Adames, they go after Burns, Glasnow. Any big free agent or trade target, I expect the Dodgers to be fully interested in just about every single one of them. The only one I don't expect them to be in on is Juan Soto because, hey, the Padres have him. They ain't trading him to the Dodgers. Just saying. So we had a little bit of news this morning on the Juan Soto front. We'll check in on that in just a moment. But keeping it with the free agents right now, the number 2 free agent out there has got to be Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the international free agent from Japan. The winter meetings are going to be happening next week. All the information is still pretty accurate from what we told you guys last night, that Yamamoto is probably not going to sign at the winter meetings, that this is going to be a deliberate process. It sounds like this could happen relatively soon after the winter meetings, say within the next week after that, but it's not expected to stretch to Christmas or even beyond that. So he has to sign a deal before January 4th. It is through the posting system. We will see what ultimately happens. But I think Yamamoto is probably going to be going to a different team. To answer your question there, Robert, I do think Otani is ultimately going to go to one spot. My guess is the Dodgers. I think Yamamoto goes to another. Yankees are very heavily interested in bringing him in, but the comments that Cashman said to the media about the agent's other client in Giancarlo Stanton, I don't necessarily think it warmed the hearts of Yamamoto or his agent. And so I think the Mets, the Mets are going to be up there with the best offer as well. I don't think the Mets or the Yankees are going to be able to outbid the Mets anyway for Yamamoto, even though they both have very deep pockets. I just think the Mets are going to go that extra dollar to get it done, and you don't have the impediment of those comments from Cashman when you go to the Mets. Plus, he gets kind of a pillow year to work things out when he transitions to the big leagues this year, because the Mets are not expected to push for a World Series. So if he throws more like a number 2 this year and then elevates through a year of acclimation to a number 1 next year, the Mets really would have something cooking there. So it takes a little bit of pressure off, and so something like that might be exactly what the doctor ordered for Yamamoto to come over to the States. The winter meetings feel so far away, Jose. Welcome in. Welcome in, Robert, as well. Winter meetings have felt very far away since the end of the season. I mean, as a Rangers fan, I've enjoyed every bit of it, so don't you worry. I've been having a good old time enjoying the Rangers' victory. But the winter meetings are what I've been looking forward to pretty much for the last 6 months, since the trade deadline, since even before that. I really liked all the, when I was younger anyway, I really liked all the activity. I liked one of the biggest ones I remember is, say, 2011. I believe that was the winter meetings that had Albert Pujols sign, Prince Fielder, all those guys, C.J. Wilson. It was a great winter meetings. That was really where things got going for me as far as, hey, winter meetings are something I really want to pay attention to. I had followed them before that, say the winter meetings where Curt Schilling would sign with the Red Sox, or Randy Johnson would move from one team to another. But where I really started focusing was in that 2011 winter meetings. And ever since then, it's been a great televised thing on MLB Network. And we're going to try to bring you some of that magic here at the Upside Sports Network this year. So make sure you guys join us. We're going to have tons of lives for you guys next week. We're going to be posting tons of videos throughout the day on multiple channels. So make sure you search Upside Sports Network on YouTube here. You'll find all the other channels as well. I've got like 14 different baseball channels out there. They will be getting some new content here during the winter meetings as well. So if you're a fan of the Rangers, the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Padres, the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Braves, Mariners, whoever, search for Upside Sports Network, look for your team, and make sure you subscribe to those channels as well. But as I said, there has been a little bit of movement anyway on the Juan Soto talks. We'll check on Dylan Cease in just a moment, but Juan Soto talks seem to be ongoing between the New York Yankees and the San Diego Padres. However, the price of poker certainly seems to be going up. The price of poker before would have been the Mariners would have been interested, the Yankees, and there was a couple of teams on the periphery. Now we're starting to see some dark horse teams start to at least circle to the Padres to say, hey, if we miss out on our top target, Otani, could we circle back to you and possibly work something out, because we promised our fan base some big improvement like a Shohei level type of player. There's not really anybody like that from position player side, unless you're talking about maybe Cody Bellinger, Matt Chapman, I guess, but that's not Shohei Otani. Juan Soto would clearly be the second best player on the market if he was a free agent this year. And so teams are going to call, once Otani does sign, the Padres and see what they could actually get done. That's why I think the price of poker for the Yankees is really about to go up, mainly because all the interest is about to ratchet up for their player down in San Diego for Juan Soto. But I still think the Yankees and the Mariners both have the inside track for him. I think the Mariners and Yankees are equally motivated to try to get something done. Yankees really need to shake things up. Mariners, Juan Soto just fits perfectly on there. I just think that Soto, with that $33 million salary next year, likely anyway, is not going to stay in San Diego through opening day. We are going to see him move. I would expect him to move pretty much in the next couple of days after Otani signs. But I think Otani first, and then Soto. Welcome back, Bryce. What's up? I think Soto gets traded during the winter meetings since Cashman and Preller are in the same room face-to-face. I think he goes to the Yanks. Yanks are not going to mess it up this time. Well, I mean, Cashman hasn't exactly had the greatest track record over the past 3 years. I will give him the benefit of the doubt because he's been there for, umpteen years at this point. Cashman, though, really is starting to feel the pressure. I think we can tell with his feistiness, combativeness with reporters that he's very personable with usually. He seems a lot more defensive rather than, hey, I made a good move, we did the right thing, our process was good. Now he's more defending that process rather than just stating this happened, this happened, this happened, and then looking for the good side and everything. So we're starting to see him having to be more defensive about the process that he has, those types of things. Do I think the Yankees ultimately get something done for Soto? To answer the bigger question, if I had to guess, the Yankees absolutely have to get this done. They're not going to get Yamamoto in my estimation. That would be the best target for them in my estimation. But I think Soto, would be their last best hope to really salvage this offseason for their fan base and for that team. I'm not saying Soto solves all their problems, but I am saying at least gives them another star in New York. I'm not sure if they'll be able to re-sign him. I don't think they'll be able to extend him, that's for sure. But at least you'd be able to get a compensation pick if you lose him after the season. Now, Yankees fans, I know you don't want to hear that, but you're talking about a team that has a lot of aircraft carrier level contracts, most of which have not worked out. Stanton, Rodon, LeMahieu, among others. And maybe it's just time to reset the books a little bit over the next couple of years if they don't get anything done of the magnitude of a Soto or a Yamamoto. Maybe they just try to ride out the contracts that they have, but they're the Yankees. 82-80 is not a good season for them. It's a middling year for most teams, but this year for the Yankees was terrible by their estimation. And so the Yankees need to fix some things. I still think they need to go after some starting pitching. If they don't get Yamamoto, I wouldn't go for the Juan Soto. I wouldn't go for the Cody Bellingers of the world. I would go for more athletic outfielders. Say like Leody Taveras from the Rangers is going to be a guy on the trade market, I believe, during this trade season, or they're in this winter meetings. And so I think if the Rangers are looking for some starting pitching and bullpen, Yankees could give them a bullpen piece, or they could be a part of a 3-team trade to get an athletic center fielder in there and give them more athleticism. The Yankees have been more about slug, slug, slug pretty much over the last 3 or 4 years. And I don't think it's really worked to their advantage. I think they're starting to have some issues, and those warts really are starting to show. The diversity, the overachievement they had with Gio Urshela, with Michael Tauchman, among others, Luke Voigt, say 3-4 years ago. And from then, we have the Joey Gallo trade that didn't work out. We have all the other signings that ultimately just have not worked in the Yankees' favor. Appreciate those hearts, by the way. But I'm very curious to see what's the next move for the Yankees and Cashman, because I believe this is probably the final year for Cashman if they don't make it to the postseason. And I think he's probably going to have to win one series in order to keep in his role. So I think that it's time for Cashman to move on to the next challenge in his life. My cards might not be done with starting pitching. Absolutely agree. We're starting to see some news on Dylan Cease. We'll get into that in just a moment, Sarah. Marino did say Otani should sign before winter meetings or right at the start. I do believe Otani is going to sign early on at the winter meetings. By all estimations, that the sweepstakes for him is starting to wear down just a little bit. It's at least from sources behind the scenes. None of the big reporters like Heyman, Morosi, Rosenthal, Nightingale, Sherman none of those guys, Feinsand, none of those guys are saying anything about what teams he's talking to, where he's traveling to, the contract numbers he's looking for, the most important things to him. We have none of that information from the national writers, which I think is an absolute miss on the sport of baseball. I agree with Harold Reynolds, who was on a hot stove the other day saying as much. I think this would be the biggest story, leading SportsCenter every single day if we saw him, boarding a plane for Dallas to see the Texas Rangers, boarding a plane to New York to talk with Steve Cohen, boarding a plane to LA to talk with their ownership group and Andrew Friedman. That would be the story every single day. We saw what happened with the decision with LeBron James and Jim Gray anyway, hosting that Boys and Girls Benefit anyway. That was made for television. Otani would be absolute money if they did something like that. And it's not just here in the U.S. Think about all the international eyes that are on Otani right now and all the money that's going to go to the team that ultimately signs him. I told you guys last night, the team that signs him, his estimated value to the team, just in monetary value, is $75 million in revenue because he's on your team. Not talking about the play that he play or the impact that he has on the field, just the money he brings into the building is $75 million. So you talk about what exactly is Shohei worth on the open market. Will he get $500, $550, $600 million over the course of 10 to 12 years? You can see how that money is easily offset by the money you're going to bring in just from outside revenue coming into your team because he comes to you. So we'll see what happens there. He's starting to lose some power, maybe. Yeah, I would agree with you there as far as Cashman is. I think Hal Steinbrenner's, like I said, say 2, 3 weeks ago, and even this past offseason, the guy who really got it done for Aaron Judge was not Brian Cashman. It was Hal Steinbrenner and his relationship there with Aaron Judge, the player, not his relationship with Brian Cashman that ultimately got it done. So I think Cashman's seat is very, very, very hot. Welcome in, Jordan, Bryce. Welcome back, Sarah. Yanks are said to be mainly focused on Soto going into the winter meetings, John Heyman says. I believe that is the case, Bryce, but that's mainly because Yamamoto is going to take a little bit of time. I think they're trying to get that Soto deal done before the market for Soto absolutely explodes after Otani signs. If they can get Soto deal done before Otani signs, huge win for the Yankees. I don't think they're going to have to give up quite as much as they would after a trade for Otani or after a signing of Otani by another team. But because I think the price of poker, like I said, is going to go through the roof with all the interest that you're going to see come out of the woodwork for Juan Soto after Otani goes. Yamamoto is doing the same thing as Otani, so maybe it's a Japanese thing. No offense. I'm not sure it's quite as clear with Yamamoto. Yamamoto's still new to coming over to the U.S. His handlers are at least talking to the media and talking to John Heyman, for instance, whereas Otani, his handlers are saying nothing, not word one, about what's going on with his free agency. So that's kind of the difference. I think Otani reminds me a lot of Derek Jeter in the way he likes to do his business. He's not going to do it, on page 6 in the New York Post. He's not going to do it, on Twitter. He's going to be doing things his own way behind the scenes. He has a huge home out there in Hawaii now. He's not even in the mainland of the U.S. right now for his off-season home. And so as far as geography, I don't think that plays a big part. But again, that's us purely guessing at that one. Looks like the Yankees are broke boys now. I don't know about that, Jordan. I mean, they're paying a bunch of money to Rodon, Cole, LeMahieu, Judge, Stanton, Rizzo. The list goes on for the Yankees. And I don't think they're broke. I still think they're going to invest probably $30 to $45 million in this free agent class. But they have a lot of holes to fill as far as I'm concerned with athleticism, third base, starting pitching, and some bullpen help. That's a lot of holes for a team that's went 82-80, and I don't think they're going to get much better production from the guys they already have on their roster because they are getting older. Those contracts are not going to look better as they get older. Rodon might come back next year and be the one guy that shows some improvement because of how little he was able to provide this year. But outside of that, where's the positive regression going to come from? Health? I suppose getting a full healthy season from Rodon would help you out. Getting Aaron Judge healthy for 162 would be great, but it's very rare that he's been healthy for 162. And the 1 or 2 seasons that we've seen of Judge when he is healthy that long, they are fantastic. But that's not the majority of his career. We're talking about 2 seasons out of 6 or 7 now, 8 seasons now for Aaron Judge that he's been able to play that many games. I think Aaron Judge, because he has a bigger body, is more susceptible to some of those soft tissue injuries that we've seen for him. And we'll see what happens for him. But I still think he's a great player. But I don't think you're counting on Aaron Judge for more than 145, 135 games a season. I think if you can get 30 starts out of Rodon at this point, it'd be a great season for him, no matter what type of production he gives you. But getting him back on the mound healthy and performing is exactly what the doctor ordered. And then you go to guys like Cortez. I'm curious to see how he bounces back as well. Jay's GM says he's all in on both Otani and very much in it for Soto as well. My expectations are through the roof. I'm sure they are. I'm sure they would love to add talent. I'm just not sure why Otani would go there first. What's his fit on that team? He's not going to pitch this coming season. That's fine. He's going to be your DH every day, but you have 2 guys on your roster that already need to play 50% of the time at DH in Vlad Guerrero and Alejandro Kirk. Maybe this leads them to, spin off Vlad Guerrero Jr., but if they do that, then even more so, why is Otani going to sign there? I'm not buying that either. But I'm sure they're in. I'm sure they'd love to get it done. I'm just not sure how realistic it is for Jays fans to expect either of them to go there. As for the Soto talks, I'm sure they'd love to add some outfield talent. I think that would actually be a good bet for them to improve. But I think the young guys that they have coming are going to help them a little bit more, especially straightening out their books. They spent a lot of money on that starting pitching. The Barrios contract is probably one of the 10 worst in the game now at this point. I'm not saying Barrios is bad. I'm just saying the money that's invested in him is not exactly good value. So, but the Gossman money looks good. He looks like a true ace, really elevated over the last couple years since he signed with the Blue Jays. I'm just curious what's the next step for this team. They're going to have a hole at third base. They need some help in their bullpen, not to mention center field with Kiermaier going. Michael A. Taylor sounds like a great fit from the free agent pool, but maybe they go the trade route and bring in Leody Taveras. 10 worst? Yes. It was one of the articles as well on The Athletic that Barrios' contract is one of the 10 worst in the game. I can't remember the author of that article, but that one came out yesterday, I want to say. He slotted in at number 7 as one of the worst contracts in all of baseball. I know, Jordan. I don't know about a career year. He had, what, a 5 ERA for the majority of it? But anyway, Sarah, I'm sorry, we forgot to go back to the Dylan Cease rumors. So let me circle back to those. Dylan Cease, of course, is one of the best starting pitchers in all of baseball when he is right. We saw he's a perennial Cy Young candidate when he is right. Had a sub-3 ERA down to a 2.2 2 years ago. This past season, though, not one of his best. Over 4, close to 4.5 anyway. Just really looked a little lost out there on the mound. If he bounces back, which I think is a reasonable bet, maybe he gets down to a 3.5, which is still a great player. So what type of trade value does he have on the market? We did some trade value trades with that yesterday. He has around 40 surplus value, so you're probably looking at least 2 blue chip prospects and then maybe some filler after that. The teams that are said to be interested that we've already spoken about, the Baltimore Orioles, the LA Dodgers, and then the Atlanta Braves recently have entered that conversation for Dylan Cease. And now the news comes out today that the Cardinals are not done looking to add some starting pitching. They are looking at bringing in another top of the rotation starter. I'll check on that one, Jordan, here in just a second. But as far as Dylan Cease goes, I think his market is quite robust. I would be shocked if either the Cardinals or Braves ultimately get it done. But I think the Cardinals are looking for a front-of-the-rotation starter if they're going to dip their toe in the market once again for a starting pitcher. I thought Glasnow would have been a great fit for them. Burns would have been a great fit, but Burns is within the division. Not sure how feasible that is to work out a deal with Milwaukee. So the Glasnow trade idea might have made more sense, at least from the outside looking in. Bieber might be more realistic as far as a gettable target, lower cost, injury issues, etc. But Dylan Cease has no shortage of teams that are interested in bringing him in. Starting pitching is very, very hot right now on the market, both on the trade market and in free agency. So we'll see where Dylan Cease goes. But again, I'm expecting one of Baltimore or LA ultimately to get him because of their depth of their prospect pools. It remains to be seen what happens in LA as far as whether or not they get Otani, get Yamamoto, get Snell. If they get 2 or even all 3 of those guys, then I think the Dodgers do not bring in Dylan Cease, and then I think Baltimore has the leg up there. I think Baltimore really is targeting Dylan Cease quite aggressively. We saw that at the trade deadline. I think Eduardo Rodriguez is another guy that fits really well in Baltimore. But to kind of answer your question or comment earlier anyway, Sarah, I do believe the Cardinals would love to add to the front of the rotation starter, but I have yet to see them really show the chutzpah, I guess is the best way to put it. The rumors aren't coming out of them like we've seen when they're really targeting one of the best players in the game. Like, remember the trade for Goldschmidt, the trade for Arenado. They really took advantage of some situations. They've never really paid full retail for a player, and you're going to have to pay full retail for Dylan Cease. Sure, he's coming off of a down year. That might discount it a hair, but I don't think they want to give up their upper level of their farm system for a guy that's coming off of a down year when there are other guys on the trade market and in free agency who could do just the exact same thing, but wouldn't cost them their top shelf farm system prospects. So we'll see what happens with the Cardinals. I still think they could be in there, for a guy like Tyler Glasnow, but remains to be seen, where he ultimately goes. I would expect him to move a lot at the winter meetings or maybe a day or two after. So trade talks are certainly going to pick up. We saw some more trade talks the other day surrounding the Toronto Blue Jays about Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr. We kind of put the kibosh on both of those, saying how Bo Bichette's too vital to that team. Vlad Guerrero Jr., if you're looking to possibly See if the team had soured on him a little bit. Now's the time to really check on it. But I don't think either of those guys are going anywhere. But as far as the Jose Barrios stuff, let's go ahead and dig into that real quick. Oops. .365, wow. That does kind of surprise me. I do not remember him having that good of a season. July. Of course, I didn't really pay attention to him much after June. Looks like he pitched about a 3 and change ERA after June. So, okay. I'm still not buying him, though, as one of the best, values out there. The money that's on his deal doesn't exactly work out the best for the Blue Jays. I think if he's able to replicate this type of a season, though, then they could have something. I'm just not sure how much this season that he had is he can duplicate this season. So you see his WHIP numbers were down a little bit from his career averages. He had some improvements, but he's going to be getting into his age? What is he now? So he's 94, so that would put him at 29 years old? And he's always been more of a fastball type of pitcher. We'll see if he learns how to change up his repertoire over the next few years as he turns into more of a pitcher rather than a thrower. But he's always been more of a go after the strikeout type of pitcher. And we'll see how he's able to transition to that next phase of his career. But for me, I still am not saying he's one of the best values out there, but I still think he's more likely than not going to be one of the worst contracts for starting pitchers in the next few years. But that's The Athletic, anyway, the article that they had with Jose Barrios as one of the 10 worst contracts, if you want to check that one out on The Athletic. Alrighty, so as I said, there wasn't too much news since we last got with you guys. We talked about the Dylan C stuff. We talked about the Nick Martinez going to the Cincinnati Reds. We'll get into some trade talks, maybe do some play around with some trades as we get closer to the winter meetings. But remember, we'll be live for you guys Sunday night, breaking down all of the rumors for every single team. We'll see, where these guys are ultimately going to go. I wouldn't be surprised if Montgomery is off the market before we get to Sunday. What do I think of Blake Snell? I think he has great stuff. I think he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. The question I have is how often is he going to be able to strand runners on base? How often, once we go to a automatic strike zone, is he not going to get the call on some of those borderline pitches? I think he's gotten quite the benefit of the doubt with the movement that he has on his stuff. He still has great swing and miss rates, don't get me wrong. But getting those called third strikes, those called strikes that are on the edge just a little bit off, once they go to an automatic strike zone, I think that's going to hurt Blake Snell and increase his walk numbers even more and force him to actually have to come into the zone, which is going to result in some hard hit rates. Plus, the issue for him, he's only thrown 180 innings twice in the last 6 years with a bunch of mediocrity in between. We saw the breakdown on MLB Now about how the last 4 years before this season weren't exactly his best seasons. We're talking about 120 innings for a full season anyway. Not exactly cutting it from a major league starting pitcher. Even though the innings are high quality as far as the run prevention, I'm not necessarily sure that the usage of his arm is not worse than, say, a guy like Aaron Nola, who even over the last 6 years has thrown 300 more innings than Blake Snell. I have yet to see the total number of pitches, but I'm very curious to see how many both guys have thrown. The reason why Snell doesn't get very deep into games is because he's throwing so many pitches in those first 5 innings, 5, maybe 6 innings. That's why he's not going very deep in those games. And so while his 5 innings might be 100 pitches, Aaron Nola's 7 innings might be 100 pitches. So I'm just not sure Blake Snell's a good bet for the long term. I'd be curious to see what the number of pitches are between the two guys. I'll see if I can get some of those numbers for you guys by Sunday. But I'm very curious to see the wear and tear on his arm, if it's going to start to affect him equally to a guy like Aaron Nola, who even though he's thrown 300 more innings, may have thrown just as many pitches. And because those guys are on base and he's trying to prevent those runs, those same innings, those same number of pitches might be more stressful to him than a guy like Aaron Nola, who doesn't have a whole lot of runners on base when he does pitch. So I'm very curious to see what the market says about Blake Snell. He has no shortage of teams interested. I'm just not sure it's the best bet on the market. In fact, I would say it's probably the riskiest one on the market this year because the money it's going to take to be able to bring him in. But let us know in the comment section where you think Snell's going to go. How much do you think he's going to sign for, and how many years do you think he's going to get? I think we're looking at probably a 5 to 7 year deal for Blake Snell. If he's on a 5-year deal, I'm expecting that AAV to be closer to $30 million. If he gets closer to the 7-year deal, maybe we're looking more at the 27, 26 range. But we'll see what happens there. Jordan Montgomery's another guy who's a little bit older, but has a great arm. Of course, we've already talked a little bit about how the expectation is that he's going to get a little bit less than what Aaron Nola got. We played around yesterday with what he could get: 5 years, 125, 6 years, 150. Somewhere in that range. 6 years, 140. But he's another great bet to sign at some point in the next week, either before the winter meetings or right at the winter meetings. Good point. Just heard Heyman say he was going to Philly. Yikes! Really? Blake Snell going to Philly? I don't know about that. I haven't seen anything on that. Let me know where you got that from for Heyman, or for the Snell to the Philly rumors from Heyman. Anyway, I'm curious about that one, Robert. I'll check Twitter when I get off of here as well. But appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Can have a little bit of a shorter one today. We're at the 35-minute mark right now, 37 minutes. But we're going to try to keep these, probably in the hour range during the winter meetings. At night anyway, kind of give you a recap of all the news. And then during the day, we're going to try to give you some short information. If something breaks, say the Otani news breaks, we're going to immediately go live into an emergency live. And we'll probably be live for quite a while, breaking down the impact of his signing, the dollars, all those kinds of things, what the lineups will look like, what teams do in response to Otani signing, what the team does next after bringing in Otani. Same thing for Yamamoto. We'll break into an emergency live. Same thing for a trade for Juan Soto. Any one of these big free agents, when they do sign, we will immediately go live. So make sure you guys turn on your alerts for the Upside Sports Network here on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, spam the heart, hit the confetti, hit the 100 in the chat. Really does help us out. So curious to see where these guys ultimately go. I am just as excited as all of you guys to see where these guys finally sign. Position players are very thin this year, so it's going to be a lot of pitching that's going to fly off the board at the winter meetings. And I'm expecting some surprise trades as well. Every year we get at least 2 or 3 of them at the winter meetings that are literally out of nowhere. So hopefully there's some big ones, and we can have some fun chewing them, breaking them down and tearing them apart. But we'll see what happens here at the winter meetings. But appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Make sure you guys hit that like on the video. Appreciate that for those of you who have already done so. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow night. Y'all have a good one.